My parents and in-laws used my fragile mind to push me into leaving my husband, but I uncovered their hidden feud and crushed them with one cold move. At 27, I have been married to Marcus, who is 28, for 3 years. Our bond stretches back to childhood, rooted in the close friendship between our families. As kids, we were inseparable during family gatherings, our laughter mingling at parties and holidays. Those carefree days faded in high school as our paths diverged, only to reconnect years later in business school. That rekindled connection blossomed into love and, eventually, marriage. But the past year brought challenges that tested our union. Marcus landed a prestigious job at one of the state's top firms, a role that came with a generous salary and immense pride. Meanwhile, I found myself floundering. After leaving my own job, I struggled to find a new one that matched my ambitions, which left me feeling adrift. My competitive nature, which had always driven me, made it hard to accept that I wasn't keeping pace with Marcus. I wasn't envious of his success, truly, I was proud of him, but I couldn't shake the sense of being left behind as he thrived in his career. His support was unwavering, yet I yearned for opportunities to prove my worth, to stand on equal footing with him. This internal struggle began to weigh heavily on me, plunging me into a quiet depression. I managed to conceal my turmoil from Marcus, putting on a brave face, but my parents saw through the facade. In a moment of vulnerability, I confided in them about my feelings of inadequacy, a decision I would come to regret deeply. Rather than offering comfort, they seized the opportunity to sow discord between Marcus and me. They painted a grim picture, warning that Marcus's focus on his career would eclipse our relationship, that he would eventually overlook me entirely. His long hours at work, which left little time for us to connect, only fueled their narrative. They suggested that Marcus was subtly steering me toward a life as a housewife, pointing to the fact that I was handling most of the household chores while he provided financially. Initially, I didn't see this division of labor as unfair. His substantial income seemed to justify my role at home. But my parents' words planted seeds of doubt, making me question whether Marcus was intentionally nudging me into a role I had never wanted, a stay-at-home wife, a title that clashed with my fiercely held belief that my career defined my value. From a young age, my parents instilled in me a relentless drive to succeed professionally. They equated worth with work, teaching me that to be idle was to be unworthy. This mantra shaped my identity, pushing me to prioritize career achievements over personal relationships, even at the expense of being a supportive spouse or friend. My ambition was to outshine everyone, including Marcus, in the race for the best job, the highest position, the largest salary. When I shared my feelings of failure with my parents, comparing my stagnation to Marcus's soaring success, they didn't hesitate to exploit my vulnerability. They insisted that Marcus was deliberately undermining me, urging me to leave him before he trapped me in a domestic role. Shockingly, my in-laws echoed this sentiment, claiming that Marcus, having grown up with a housewife mother, likely expected the same from me. They described his actions as a calculated effort to confine me to the home, warning that our roles would soon solidify if I didn't act. The weight of both sets of parents pushing the same narrative made their warnings feel credible, despite my initial skepticism. The combined pressure from my parents and in-laws, coupled with my own spiraling insecurities, overwhelmed me. In a haze of despair, I made a reckless decision. I packed my bags and left Marcus without a word. My depression, fueled by my unemployment and the toxic influence of our families, drove me to isolate myself completely. I cut off all communication, deactivating my social media accounts and changing my phone number to avoid being found. With my savings, I rented a small house in the suburbs, where I spent nearly 3 weeks in solitude. Days blurred together as I lay in bed, consumed by tears and self-pity. I barely ate, managing only one meal a day, which led to significant weight loss and a gaunt, unhealthy appearance. I ventured outside only for necessities like groceries, and even then, I hid my face to avoid recognition. My mental state deteriorated to the point where I contemplated divorce, a thought that felt both terrifying and inevitable in my darkest moments. After a couple of weeks, Marcus, with the help of the police, tracked me down and brought me home. The house I'd been staying in was nearly empty, furnished only with a bed, and I hadn't seen my reflection in weeks. When I returned home and caught sight of myself, I was shocked at how much weight I'd lost and how disheveled I looked, unbrushed hair, unwashed, and utterly unrecognizable. Yet, Marcus's first reaction was to envelop me in a warm embrace, tears streaming down his face as he expressed relief and love. His unconditional affection made me confront the gravity of my actions. I felt an overwhelming sense of guilt for abandoning him over something so misguided, driven by a toxic mix of my insecurities, our family's manipulations, and my inability to cope with unemployment. I realized how irrational I had been, how my untreated depression had clouded my judgment. I began therapy shortly after, a step that proved transformative, but I initially withheld the full truth from Marcus. I told him I left because I was depressed and didn't want to burden him, which was partially true, but I omitted the role our families played. As time passed, I rebuilt my life. I secured a stable job, not as prestigious as Marcus's, but fulfilling in its own right. Therapy helped me reframe my perspective, teaching me that Marcus wasn't my rival but my partner, and that our successes were shared. I began to find peace in this new understanding, shedding the hyper-competitive mindset that had once defined me. Despite this progress, my relationship with our parents remained strained. I maintained minimal contact with them, unable to fully trust them after their betrayal. They never acknowledged their earlier attempts to drive a wedge between Marcus and me, instead acting shocked by my disappearance and claiming they were worried sick. Therapy helped me see their actions for what they were, not concern, but a craving for drama that served their own agendas. I kept them at arm's length, and the awkwardness between us grew, though Marcus, ever the peacemaker, held our fractured family dynamic together without pressing the issue. Reflecting on this period, I see now how my parents' teachings warped my sense of self. Their emphasis on professional success as the sole measure of worth left me ill-equipped to handle setbacks or to value my role as a partner. The pressure to outdo everyone, including Marcus, blinded me to the strength of our partnership. When I left, I wasn't just running from him but from the weight of my own expectations, amplified by our family's toxic influence. Their united front, my parents and in-laws conspiring to push me out of my marriage, was a betrayal I couldn't have anticipated. It wasn't just their words but the way they preyed on my vulnerabilities, exploiting my depression to further their own ends. As I processed this in therapy, I began to understand the depth of their manipulation and the importance of protecting my mental health and my marriage from their interference. This realization marked a turning point. I started to prioritize open communication with Marcus, recognizing that keeping secrets, however well-intentioned, had nearly cost us our relationship. I also began to question the values I'd inherited, reevaluating what success truly meant to me. Was it the relentless pursuit of a title or paycheck, or was it building a life with someone who loved and supported me unconditionally? Marcus's reaction when he found me, his tears, his relief, his refusal to judge, showed me the kind of partnership I wanted to nurture. As I moved forward, I knew I had to confront the truth about our family's actions, not just for my own closure but for the sake of our future together. The road ahead would involve difficult conversations, but I was ready to face them with Marcus by my side, stronger for the lessons learned through this painful chapter. About a week ago, I reached a breaking point. The guilt of keeping secrets from Marcus, my husband, had been gnawing at me for too long. I knew he deserved the truth about why I vanished from our life together, so I gathered my courage and sat him down. Pouring out my heart, I explained how lost I felt when his career soared at a top firm while I was stuck, jobless, and grappling with my own ambitions. I admitted that my competitive streak, something I'd worn like a badge of honor, made it unbearable to feel like I was falling behind. Marcus listened with such kindness, his eyes soft with understanding, and he even tried to comfort me, reminding me that we were a team. But when I revealed the darker truth, how our parents, both mine and his, had fueled my doubts and pushed me to leave him, his demeanor shifted. His face tightened, and I could see anger simmering beneath his calm exterior. I explained how they convinced me he was trying to trap me in a role I never wanted, that of a stay-at-home wife, preying on my insecurities during a time when I was already fragile. I apologized profusely, my voice trembling as I admitted how foolish I'd been to believe them, how I now saw that their words were a distortion of reality, amplified by my own fears. Marcus's reaction was immediate and intense. He grabbed his phone, and for a fleeting moment, I feared he was furious with me. Instead, he dialed his parents. The conversation was short but explosive. His voice, usually so steady, was laced with betrayal as he confronted them for trying to sabotage our marriage. He told them he was done, no more contact, no more chances, and hung up before blocking their number. Turning to me, his expression softened but remained resolute. He said he felt the same about my parents and wanted nothing to do with either set of them ever again. My heart sank, not because I disagreed, but because the weight of our family's actions was finally sinking in. I asked, almost whispering, if he was angry with me. To my relief, he shook his head, his eyes warm with empathy. He understood how my parents' relentless emphasis on competition had shaped me, how my perfectionism had driven me to a breaking point. He acknowledged that my decision to leave was a product of my mental struggle, a moment of weakness I'd never shown before. He could forgive me, he said, but our parents' deliberate manipulation was unforgivable. They had taken advantage of my depression, twisting my vulnerabilities to drive a wedge between us, and that, to him, was despicable. I was stunned by the depth of their betrayal. Why would they do this? Marcus had a theory, one that made my stomach churn with its plausibility. He explained that, despite our family's long history of friendship, there was no love lost between them. As kids, we'd played together at family gatherings, blissfully unaware of the undercurrents of resentment. Marcus revealed that his parents would gossip about mine the moment they got in the car after those events, their words dripping with disdain. I never noticed because my parents were more discreet, saving their criticisms for private moments behind closed doors. Marcus had always known about this rift but assumed I did too. He said our parents never opposed our marriage outright because they knew we'd defy them, likely cutting them off if they tried to interfere. Instead, they played a long game, waiting for a moment of weakness, my unemployment and depression, to strike. When both sets of parents urged me to leave, claiming Marcus wanted to confine me to a domestic role, their united front made their lies feel like truth. The fact that his own parents turned against him carried a weight that tipped me over the edge, convincing me to flee without a word. This revelation shattered my trust in our families. I blocked both sets of parents, my heart heavy but resolute. But yesterday, an email from my parents broke through my defenses. They pleaded for me to unblock them, to give them a chance to talk. Against my better judgment, I decided to call them, hoping for closure, a final conversation to lay this mess to rest. I told them about Marcus's theory and why I believed him, explaining that their actions led me to cut them off. Their response was a flood of emotion. My mother, tears in her voice, insisted they never meant to hurt me, that they only wanted what was best. She claimed to still love and respect Marcus, hurt that we thought they'd intentionally sabotage our marriage. My father echoed her, saying they didn't share the same motives as Marcus's parents and were devastated that I believed they wanted to harm me. Their words felt so genuine, their pain so raw, that I was left reeling. I didn't think Marcus was trying to turn me against them, but I questioned whether his theory was entirely accurate. Should I give my parents another chance? Should I apologize for blocking them without hearing them out? I felt trapped in a fog of confusion, my instincts unreliable after nearly destroying my marriage the last time I trusted them. When I shared this with Marcus, he was gentle but firm. He warned me not to fall for their act, pointing out that I'm still in a vulnerable place mentally. He was right. Since opening up to my parents about our struggles, I've been too quick to believe what others tell me, a dangerous habit that therapy has helped me recognize. Marcus urged me to be less trusting, a lesson I'm still learning. He dropped another bombshell, one that clarified the depth of our family's animosity. Apparently, my father's brother was once engaged to my mother-in-law's cousin. Days before their wedding, he was caught cheating with his secretary, sparking a scandal that tore our families apart. The fallout was so severe that they couldn't openly feud in public, so they maintained a facade of civility. They never stopped us from being friends as kids or getting married because airing their grievances would have exposed this ugly history. Marcus knew about it, but I was oblivious, having always avoided gossip. This hidden feud explained why our parents seized the chance to break us up, exploiting my vulnerability to further their own vendetta. Reflecting on this, I felt a mix of anger and sadness. Our parents' actions weren't just misguided, they were calculated, rooted in a decades-old grudge that had nothing to do with us. Their manipulation was a betrayal not only of me but of the love Marcus and I had built. I thought back to my childhood, to the moments when our families seemed like one big, happy unit. How had I missed the tension simmering beneath the surface? I realized that my parents' obsession with my career, their insistence that work defined worth, had blinded me to their flaws. They raised me to be fiercely independent, but that independence came at a cost, an inability to see others' motives clearly, especially when I was at my lowest. Marcus's parents, too, played their part, their betrayal cutting deeper because they turned against their own son. The united front they presented was a cruel tactic, leveraging my trust in them to push me away from the one person who truly had my back. This ordeal has taught me hard lessons about trust and vulnerability. Therapy has been a lifeline, helping me untangle the mess of emotions and beliefs that led me to that dark place. I'm learning to question the narratives I've been fed, to see my parents not as infallible guides but as flawed people with their own agendas. Marcus's unwavering support has been my anchor, his forgiveness a reminder that our marriage is worth fighting for. But the wounds left by our family's actions are still raw. I'm torn between wanting closure and fearing that any further contact will pull me back into their web of manipulation. The email from my parents, their tearful pleas, lingers in my mind, but Marcus's warning echoes louder. Not everyone wants the best for me, and I need to protect myself. The scandal from years ago, the cheating and broken engagement, casts a long shadow, and I'm only now seeing how it shaped our family's actions. As I move forward, I know I need to prioritize my mental health and my marriage, but the path to healing feels uncertain, fraught with the ghosts of betrayal and the challenge of rebuilding trust, not just in others, but in myself. The truth about our family's hidden agenda has finally come into focus, and it's a bitter pill to swallow. Learning about the long-standing feud between my parents and Marcus's, rooted in a scandal I was oblivious to, has made it harder for them to pull the wool over my eyes. I've been replaying the moment I confided in my parents about my struggles, expecting support but receiving manipulation instead. Why did they feel the need to share my vulnerabilities with my in-laws? The only explanation that makes sense is a chilling one. They saw an opportunity to collude, to exploit my fragile state and drive a wedge between Marcus and me. The thought that they could stoop so low, prioritizing their grudges over my well-being, is revolting. No rational person could orchestrate such a betrayal and sleep soundly at night. I last spoke to my parents a week ago, and I've since gone silent. I don't plan to reach out again. The clarity I've gained convinces me their actions were deliberate, a calculated attempt to sabotage my marriage. If they were so intent on seeing us fail, they should have spoken up before we exchanged vows. Their silence back then gave us their blessing, or so I thought. Their interference now feels like a betrayal of that unspoken agreement. I deeply regret opening up to my parents about my struggles. That vulnerability was a gift they didn't deserve, and I wish I'd turned to Marcus instead, keeping our challenges private. He's been steadfast, his love unwavering even after I left without a word. When I finally confessed the truth about why I fled, he revealed he'd always known about the tension between our families. He assumed I did too but thought I avoided the topic out of discomfort, so he never brought it up. It makes sense now. My ignorance stemmed from my aversion to gossip, a habit I prided myself on but which left me blind to their true natures. My parents always presented themselves as champions of my independence, but I see now that their values were skewed, shaping me into someone who equated worth with achievement at the expense of everything else. They raised me to be fiercely competitive, independent, and self-sufficient, qualities I once saw as strengths. But those traits came with a cost. I became so focused on my own success that I struggled to consider others' feelings, including Marcus's. It wasn't healthy, and I see now that I mirrored my parents' self-centeredness. Their encouragement to leave Marcus during my darkest moment wasn't about protecting me, it was about feeding their own narrative, one that aligned with their disdain for his family. My in-laws' complicity only deepened the betrayal, their words echoing my parents in a way that made their lies feel like truth. I'm done letting them manipulate me. I've stepped out of their toxic cycle, refusing to let their schemes dictate my choices, like abandoning the man who stood by me through it all. The weight of public judgment has been heavy. Some have called me foolish for falling for our parents' manipulations, and maybe they're right. But those words sting, especially as I navigate intensive therapy to untangle the mess of emotions and insecurities that led me here. I'm not asking for pity, but a little compassion would go a long way. People don't see the full picture, the depression, the pressure, the way my mind warped under the strain. I wasn't myself when I left, and therapy has been a lifeline, helping me understand why I was so easily swayed. My vulnerability made me an easy target, and our parents exploited that without hesitation. Today, they tried to confront me at our home, but I was out with friends, seeking a moment of normalcy. Marcus was there instead, and I'm grateful he waited until I returned to share what happened, sparing me the stress while I was out. When my parents showed up, they unleashed their fury on Marcus, hurling insults and accusations. They claimed he was manipulating me, trying to steal me from them, as if I'm some possession to be claimed. I'm married to him. He doesn't need to steal what's already part of our shared life. Their words were absurd, a projection of their own guilt. They accused Marcus of turning me against them, but they did that themselves with their deceit. They admitted to regretting not fabricating lies to push me toward divorce, believing Marcus deserved it because his family, in their eyes, is nothing but cheaters and liars. The irony is staggering. They're no better, their actions driven by the same vindictiveness they condemn. Their true colors are out now, and I feel no obligation to feign sympathy. I'm done with them, and I'm starting to see that their influence is at the root of so many of my struggles. It's been nearly a month since this all unfolded, and today brought a new low. My parents' lawyer contacted me to say they've cut me out of their will, leaving everything to my cousins. They made it clear that the only way to fix this is to divorce Marcus. I laughed. Nice try. Their attempt to buy my loyalty is pathetic, especially after everything they've done. It's not about the money, it's about their audacity to think I'd trade my marriage for their approval. Their actions only solidify my resolve to keep them at a distance. Reflecting on this ordeal, I see how deeply my parents' teachings shaped me, for better and worse. Their emphasis on competition and self-reliance gave me drive but also blinded me to the value of connection. I became so focused on proving myself that I lost sight of what truly matters, my partnership with Marcus, the one person who's never wavered. Therapy has helped me unravel these patterns, showing me how my parents' values were less about my success and more about their control. Their alliance with my in-laws to break us apart wasn't just a betrayal, it was a power play, rooted in a feud I didn't even know existed until Marcus opened my eyes. The scandal involving my father's brother and my mother-in-law's cousin explains so much: the resentment, the pretense, the way they hid their true feelings while plotting against us. I'm angry, but I'm also grieving the parents I thought I had, the ones I believed wanted the best for me. Marcus's strength through this has been my anchor. His decision to cut off his parents wasn't just about their betrayal but about protecting us, our future. I'm learning to do the same, to prioritize our marriage over the toxic ties that nearly tore us apart. The public's harsh words, calling me stupid, naive, hurt, but they don't define me. I'm working through my issues, confronting the insecurities that made me vulnerable to manipulation. I'm not perfect, and I don't claim to be. But I'm growing, learning to trust my instincts while leaning on Marcus and my therapist for guidance. My parents' visit today, their venom toward Marcus, only confirms what I've come to accept: they value their grudges more than my happiness. Their attempt to control me through their will is the final nail in the coffin. I'm not for sale, and I'm done letting their drama dictate my life. Marcus and I are building something stronger, and no amount of family feuds or inheritance games will change that.